Now we're going to discuss about the definition of zakat. Zakat is the third pillar of Islam. Zakat is a kind of mandatory charity that has the ability to alleviate millions of people who are suffering. Muslims believe that paying zakat cleanses, multiplies, and blesses the rest of their wealth. Zakat is also a divine link to provide people's wealth for Allah's will. And it is for Him that we aspire to end suffering and support our brothers and sisters. According to the Hanafi Madhab, zakat is 2.5% of one's wealth that has been in one's possession for a lunar year. If one's wealth is less than a certain sum, known as the nisab, no zakat is due. If one's income exceeds the nisab, zakat becomes mandatory. The importance of zakat is also stated in Quran Surah Al-Baqarah verse 110, which said, "And establish prayer and give zakat, and whatever good you put forward for yourself, you will find it with Allah."
Development can be defined as a massive social change that happened over time, where the people became more aware to have a better life and the willingness to overcome the challenges in life for the well-being of the society. And development also aims to remove the barriers between people. The issues that covered by development are uncertainty, inequality, poverty, and corruption. In our case study today, we will talk on poverty and the role of zakat in helping to eradicate or reduce the poverty line in Indonesia. Before the COVID-19, Indonesia has reported a decrease in its poverty line. However, um, after the COVID-19 pandemic, Indonesia has reported an increase in its poverty line. Thus, our group will try to scrutinize the effect of zakat on poverty in Indonesia.
Hello everyone, so in this part we're going to see Indonesia's current development circumstances looking from three different angles. So the first one is human development, and in this aspect we're going to see from Human Development Index or HDI, which is a measurement brought by UNDP. The HDI consists of health, education, and GNIP per capita. Indonesia's HDI scored 0.718 and ranked 107 worldwide according to UNDP report 2020. This score is actually have a slightly increase from the previous year, and it promises that Indonesia is leaning towards a betterment. From the HDI itself, it has three categorizations, which are very high, high, and medium. And Indonesia, as a developing country, is categorized as high. And in the ASEAN level, Indonesia still scored in the average, where there are more nations above Indonesia. But in the reality, there are a lot of problems that is not measured by HDI yet. And from the what we can see from the numbers and the reality does not really match that much. The second aspect we're going to see from economic development. According to Asian Development Bank 2021, Indonesia's 2021 GDP forecast scored 5.3%, and it is below ASEAN average and uh, rank in the region. In these difficult situations where all nations faces the same challenges, which is the pandemic, Indonesia still scored pretty much good enough. But in the reality, we have to see that in the macroeconomic, the numbers is seen as an effective solution. But in the microeconomic level, there are struggles within Indonesian society, and how the society is having difficult situations. Hence they need donations and all government assistance in this pandemic. And the third aspect, we're going to see the uneven development, and seeing from Asian Development Bank 2020 report, there are 9.4% population living below national poverty line, which is only 480 58,000 rupiahs, and it is below 500,000 rupiah, and it is only the poverty line, and in the daily life, such as in big cities, this this cost does not match the uh, the daily activity as well as the income of the society itself. And the second one is 4.7% unemployment rate and 4.3% employed populations below uh, $1.9 a day according to ADB 2020. In this number, we can see that there are a lot of social gap and in terms of economic and also socially. And quoting from Jokowi in 2019, he said that in the eastern part of Indonesia, there are various development gaps which needs to be solved.
The concept of development as a social issue within the Indonesian context can be understood through the reality of human development and social welfare in Indonesia. On the Indonesian Constitution number 11 of 2009, social welfare can be defined as the fulfillment of material, spiritual, and social needs, as well as an organized activity that aim to develop social welfare. And the main targets of the development of social welfare in Indonesia are the poor and vulnerable communities. Furthermore, Indonesia's Human Development Index, measured based on economic, health, and education levels in 2019, is 0.718, which placed Indonesia on the 107th rank out of around 189 countries. Indonesia's HDI, therefore, demonstrate the slow economic and social development as well as the difficulties to increase the quality of human resources in Indonesia. Moreover, between March and September 2020, Indonesia's poverty rate increased from 9.78% to 10.19%, or increased from 26.42 million to 27.55 million people. Hence, poverty and human development became the most crucial social problems in Indonesia.
So in this part, we're going to see how Zakat supports Indonesia's development. And seeing from previous discussion regarding Indonesia's current development circumstances, the Zakat contributes a lot in the Indonesia's social and economic development. Now, the first one is Zakat system can play a vital role in supporting sustainable economic development and facilitating better financial inclusions. The inclusivity in Indonesia related to the economic development is a serious issue, and by having those rich people and the poor ones contributes and collaborate within each other, it will create a better financial inclusions. And the second one is the development of the Zakat system can be considered complementary to the government programs of poverty alleviations. Seeing from Indonesia's government goals as well as the SDG in the worldwide, that poverty is one of the issue that needs to be tackled by the governments around the world, and the development of the zakat system can be considered complementary to this goal by hoping that the zakat can reduce the poverty number. And the third one is that it develops solidarity amongst Indonesians and relates to the essence of Pancasila as national ideology. In Indonesia, national ideology is not considered really by liberalist or realist, but the essence of national ideology itself to create a unity in diversity, and by knowing and by practicing zakat, it develops a solidarity and how the people will have awareness towards each other and how they can lend a hand if when someone needs their help.
To further grasp the importance as well as the presence of zakat within the Indonesian developmental context, this movie will now move on to consider comments as well as statements by individuals who are experts in such a field. And in our movie, we have decided to feature Bapak Sukendar, which is at the moment is the Ketua Pelaksana Harian from Baitu Zakat Pertamina, which is a non-profit organization whose task is to organize as well as to develop the zakat funds that the employees of Pertamina has put under their trust. At the start of our interview, we raised the question of how does Islam regards the practice of zakat. And from the answers that he gave to us, it can be inferred that, according to him, the existence of zakat is not just something that those of the Islamic belief conducted every Ramadan. And he also stated that the practice of zakat itself is the only religious practice within the five founding principles of Islam that touches upon two relationships simultaneously, one with God, or known as Hablum Minallah, and the other is with our fellow humans, or also known as Hablum Minanas. And lastly, he argued that there are actually three dimensions when one is addressing the practice of zakat. The first one is faith, or as he called it, keimanan. Since, as I have mentioned before, zakat is explicitly stated as one of the five founding principles within Islam. Thus, it can be argued that its existence is absolute and vital within the lives of Muslims. Furthermore, zakat also is present within the social dimension, meaning that it can be seen that in the society, in the general society, there tend to be social classes that is based on economic affluent, and by practicing zakat, it is said that it will transpire an exchange or transfer of resources from the able-bodied to the unable, thus ended up resulting in the betterment of the quality of life for the unable. And lastly, he argued that zakat also is directly concerned with the economic side, because of how, as I have mentioned before, it essentially the essential practice of zakat itself is the exchange or transfer of resources. So in this sense, within the economic sense, can be seen that zakat enables the economy to circulate, allows. Turning now to the question of how does Islam regards development as a societal issue, our interviewee stipulated that the ways in which Islam viewed the concept of development can be characterized as universal, meaning that it is not solely concerned with physical or material or quantifiable matters, but also those relating to the well-being of others. Furthermore, Pak Sukendar also stipulated that Islam, or more specifically philanthropical Islamism, is beginning to seep into the Indonesian national policies, or can also be argued to have been gathering substantial attention for the past couple of years, and that other related concepts such as economy sharia is also gaining a foothold within the realm of higher education institutions, which also includes national or non-Muslim universities. So the reason as to why he argued these two statements is because of how Islam also took into consideration matters such as economic growth or economic development, and with the delineation of economic development within Islamic tendencies, it can be said that Islam has already took such an issue into its practices, and that it can also be seen that development according to Islam is not merely something that has to do with the increase of material wealth, but also the increase of non-tangible matters such as well-being and life expectancy. Having asked those two questions, we would then move on to ask our interviewee about the correlations between these two concepts. And as I have mentioned previously and would like to reiterate in this section of the movie, is that Zakat permits the transfer of wealth, thus advancing the betterment of the quality of life for others, especially those who are classified as being unable or does not have sufficient financial capability to take care of themselves. Hence the need to ask for assistance to others with much more sufficient and affluent resources. And that in relations to his work within the Basma Pertamina organization, it can be seen that the funds gathered from Zakat and also Wakaf have also aided other sections of society as well. And he mentioned a case related to the pandemic, in which the funds from Zakat and Wakaf institutions have also aided the research progress for numerous scientific innovations. A notable example is the Genos ventilator devised by Universitas Gadjah Mada. He stated that during the pandemic, there was a much support given through his organization towards the purpose of helping others, and that other than that, it can also be seen that Zakat, or at least the organization that Pasukendar is a part of today, is also offering help in not necessarily financial related, but is also but also tackles directly the betterment of individuals, such as providing scholarships and guidance for students who are financially incapable to attend higher education institutions such as universities. As for our next question, can be seen that this question has become much more specialized, meaning that the scope of our question is much more specified towards the Indonesian context, specifically the Indonesian Muslim communities, and how do they respond to Islamic teachings or activities being conducted by the organization that Pasukenda is a part of, that is regarding zakat and its correlation to developmental issues. As for his response, our group has pinpointed two different sides of his argumentation. The first one, which is on a more positive note, it can be argued that since Indonesia is said to be the second largest Muslim populations, together with the nature of zakat itself, which is obligatory, it can be seen that the prospect or the growth potential of zakat is very much positive at the moment. And he said that it is expected that the number of capital resources, being that of money, currently being circulated within the circles of zakat, would reach around 200 trillion Indonesian rupiah, according to some of the articles and research that he has seen himself. And he also argued that there is steady growth of zakat within the Indonesian context, which is around 30% annually. And it can be seen that as time progresses, people are becoming much more aware of the implications zakat has over development as a societal issue. Lastly, he also mentioned about the psychological factor, meaning that as people grew older, their priorities also change. And this means that as people started to become have a much more stable life, they also tend to focus more on their religious obligations. And for the specific case of Islam, it can be seen that when one's own wealth has become much more affluent, it can be seen that said wealth would then be redirected towards non-personal purposes, and such as religious, for example. However, there are also some negative or existing challenges that Pasukendar thought to be worthy of being mentioned, is how he make notes of the habits of Indonesian people, especially Muslim communities, to conduct their zakat obligations by giving it directly to those who are in need, but still within their list of acquaintances, as opposed to giving it to organizational bodies like BASMA, for example. And what happened when people conduct their zakat in such a way is that it ended up falling short of its expected potential towards the advancement of larger developmental achievements. So Pasukendar mentioned that it instead of being something remarkable, zakat itself has just become a means to an end, and that there's also the problem of zakat being conducted on a regular basis and or a seasonal basis. So he argued that zakat itself, as of now, has been conducted at least in a large number to be on a seasonal basis as opposed to a regular basis, and this issue itself poses a problem towards the availability of funds, as well as how said funds would then be distributed or allocated to strategic sectors within the society. And lastly, to get a much more broader picture of how religious practices affect societal issues, Pak Sukender told us about a brief mentioning about how even within the historical evolution of Indonesia from being a colonized country to a fully sovereign one, it can be seen that the practice of zakat is said to have been intimately intertwined with the struggle to gain independence. Independence from colonizers. With that, our group argued that it emphasized or it reiterated the imperative of religious practices within the daily lives of citizens. And this also includes the problems that certain communities would face, like a development or any other societal issues. And then it can be seen that there is a trend for the younger generation to become much more involved within such a practice or such a religious practice or any initiative that tends to tackle societal issues. Therefore, it somehow also validated the relevancy and legitimacy of certain religious practices within the lives of Indonesian people. So with the active involvement of the youth, it can be seen that the imperativeness of specific religious practices are being continuously regenerated, regardless of the how many upcoming generations to come. And then lastly, it can be seen that the practice of zakat itself is quite consequential and have broad implications, that it ended up transforming itself as a reliable and accessible support system. So it can be seen from Pak Sukendar's accounts of his work experience. It is said that much more. It is said that institutions as well as the numerous parts of society are becoming much more aware of the existence of zakat and its positive implications towards the betterment of their life. Therefore, it became emphasized and highlighted that people are starting to become more reliant on the practice of zakat, specifically because of how it directly affects the funds that zakat has directly influence or could increase the quality of their life.
In conclusion, zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and its aim is to preserve economic equality in society so that money flows from rich to poor and never remains in one side. Zakat is not only a religious practice, it can also assist some of the world's poorest and most destitute communities and help in development. As a country with uneven development and a high level of poverty, Indonesia has benefited greatly from the practice of zakat because the majority of its population is Muslim.